Welcome to the Sticky Buns Podcast. It's your favorite internet radio show where we talk about the games that we love. This is our first episode back, so thank you for allowing us to take a break. You know, every now and again we all have very busy seasons in our life, and it means the world to us that we could step away and come back to this. With that being said, Brandon is still very much in the busy season of his life, so he's not going to be here for this episode, and he is not going to return to the podcast until June. So since Brandon is not here with us, we have an excellent guest, a returning guest. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Hey, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and today we're talking about PAX, the Penny Arcade Expo. We went to PAX East, Andrew and I, this year for 2024, and have we done 2 episodes about PAX in the past?
I think so. I know at least last year we dove way deep into PAX, and that was a lot of fun to really think about everything we got to do because we were there for all 4 days last year.
Yeah, and this year we did 3 days, and the year prior to last year we did 2 days. And yeah, I had a lot of fun recording last year's episode. I just remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember we recorded for so long, like my butt was hurting from from recording the podcast for so long. So hopefully
We,
we'll try
we,
to avoid that today, but
yeah, we went through, I think, everything, like every square inch of the arcade floor we reviewed, which was fun because we at that point had really visited every booth. But
Mhm.
this year, as I know we'll talk about, we had a little bit of a different experience. Not
Yeah.
better, not worse necessarily, but different.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me that we've gone 3 years in a row and it's been drastically different every 3 years. So I guess before we get into it too much, I want to ask you, why do you go to PAX? What draws you to it? And why would you like to return to this year after year?
Well, I mean, the first thing that drew me to it is it's easy for me to access.
Hmm.
You know, Boston's just an easy location for me to get to. So when I first saw that it was here and I could go, I thought, let's try it out. I've always liked video games, and I called you up and said, "Hey, would you like to go?" And it was really on a whim the first time, but I think coming back time after time, it's really the exposure to so many different kinds of video games. You can sit at home and you can watch YouTube videos, you can listen to podcasts, you can just scroll through pages on Steam or the PlayStation Store or whatever, Metacritic, to learn about video games and see video games that you like, but it's the internet. You just necessarily kind of end up in echo chambers where you're only
Hmm.
hearing about the games, the types of games that you're into. And with PAX, you just walk in and whatever's there is what's there. There's no algorithm telling you what to do or where to go. And from video games to the tabletop games, and everything in between, you really are exposed to so much and get to experience stuff that you have fun doing but wouldn't expect to.
Yeah, I think that's really just so cool, and I think you really just hit on something because when you go to PAX, like the last 3 years, the types of games that are at PAX for each of the years has just been so different, and we've really got to like experience games that maybe we wouldn't have tried,
Hmm.
or have got to see things that we may not have tried, like different genres or different art styles or whatever it may be. So it's really interesting just to see just the totally different types of games that are there, from the experimental to ones that are like on demos and coming out in a month or two. So, but I guess to answer my own question, I really go to PAX, to be inspired and to see new types of games and meet cool people. And this year I kind of just like, I don't know, I really was kind of coming into this a little bit burnt out. So I kind of just from like work, not necessarily like the podcast. So I feel like coming into this, I didn't necessarily like I was just like ready for a break. So I feel like I wasn't as I guess like outgoing as I have been in the past years, and that's something that I noticed about myself. Where I kind of like I wasn't as like I didn't necessarily go out of my way to try something that I wasn't necessarily as into where I may have done that in the past.
Yeah, and I think thinking about kind of our experience on the floor, you mentioned it has been different, each of the 3 years that we went. This year was the first year that you didn't have to wear masks, which was a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
And there was so much cool cosplay as well that we got to see. And I will admit, it was fun the last few years seeing how people incorporated masks into their
Yeah.
characters. Some people did it very creatively. But speaking to the burnt out point, it's, you do have to go into it with a mindset
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
there's so many people, there's so much to explore, there's so much to do. You have to get yourself in the right mindset. And I do feel like this year we really took, especially that first day, maybe even part of that second day, it took us to really get our minds kind of in the right mode to like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I think by
Yeah.
the end of it, we were starting to really have a good time that it's just information overload, which is so cool. Like I say, no
Hmm.
algorithms. It's just like, here it is. You've got to go and find it. But it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really like you have to kind of be open to trying new things. And I feel like if you're not necessary, if you don't come into it with that openness, it may take you a little bit to, I guess, get your feet wet, so to say. But I really want to start with, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear about one of the demos that you tried the first day. We actually saw this demo last year and the game just came out this past week, so it's very timely. If you don't mind, I'd love to start with Animal Well.
Yeah. And this is a game that I played this year. I played the year before. I mean, every chance I can get to get my hands on it, I've been excited for Animal Well. Of course, this is the game published by Big Mode, which is Video Game Donkey's new publishing brand, the first game that they came out with. It's completely solo developed by Billy Basso,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy to think about. Donkey just made a video kind of interviewing him a little bit. It's a Donkey video, so it's very funny and surreal at times as well. But it's like, oh, well, who did all the art? Well, I did. Well, who made the music? Well, I did. Well, who designed levels? I mean, it's him. And, it's that type of an effort takes so much creativity, but it takes so many resources as well. And I'm almost hesitant to really give a review of the game because it's so big and there's so many nooks and crannies and anything to discover. And I have just barely scratched the surface. The basics of
I
it.
want you to talk about the demo.
Sure. So the demo, and this is something I think that we'll return to a few times throughout the show today as we talk about these, but the demo is my favorite kind of demo,
Mm-hmm.
where it's the full game and you get 10 minutes. I think it was 10 minutes, maybe it was 15, but it's time limited and you just get the full game. So you just start from the beginning and you go. And that keeps the lines moving so well, which is, well, I know we'll get to later, can be very stressful, especially when, unlike Saturday when the convention is packed. It really, you can
Mm-hmm.
move people through if you have that time limit. But Animal Well it's a Metroidvania. It's got this very cool kind of pixely art style. And there's no dialogue, there's no story, there's no, well, I'm not gonna say there's no story, but there's no text, there's nothing to, that the title is Animal Well and the game loads up and this little flower thing opens and there's a little blob and that's you and now you're exploring and like that's everything that you know going into it and that's the beginning of the demo, that's the beginning of the game, and you just start going left and right and jumping on platforms and all of a sudden you see some stuff that looks scary and then you end up picking up some certain items and okay, well this works here and this allows me to traverse this way, and you really don't know kind of what or why. You just know that you're doing. And, you get 10 minutes with that demo, which just leaves you just wanting so much more, which is, the best thing you should feel coming out of a demo like that. It's like, hey, come buy our game. You want to leave thinking like, yeah, I want to keep going. I want to buy this game. Like, when does this come out?
Yeah. It feels like you left that. I mean, you guys have played this last year and this year. You kind of left
Yeah.
both years like a little bit in like a state of wonder, and we're like, I just want to explore more of it.
Totally. And it's hard to compare year to year because it is open-ended as well. So you're, left or right or up or down. And there's not really, as far as I know, and from what I've seen, people who've played much more of it than I have already, it's kind of like you can go in so many different directions. So even that 10 minutes, if you were to go through and do it, the demo again, which I didn't, but like you could have a totally different experience, which is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess just really quick on the kind of line things, there was one game that looked really interesting and it had a huge line, and they kind of had the same thing where it was like you get to experience the full game, but you had 2 hours to play it. And it was kind of like, I really hate that because it's like there's so many people that want to
Hmm.
experience this. And like, there's a financial cost in going to these. Like, obviously the tickets cost, and then if you
Right.
travel, it costs a lot to go there. Like, I'm not going to spend 2 hours waiting in line to play a 2 hour demo. And, it's like, because you may get 15 minutes into that demo and be like, man, like, I just don't want to play this anymore. I
Right.
don't like it. And I feel like there's so many, I guess, like developers and booths that just struggle with that. They struggle to present their game, and they struggle to like get people in and out in like a reasonable time.
Yeah, it's you really if you're going to be at this kind of, event, whether you just want to drum up, like the public's interest, or whether you're looking for like investors, or, I mean, everybody there has a purpose to being there. You really have to serve, your clients or your audience or your customers. You have to, that's who you are gearing this toward. And
Hmm.
you have to, figure out a way to get as many eyeballs on it as possible, as many hands on the controllers and the mice and the keyboard as possible, so that people can get into these games and really understand and feel and want and get excited. And it's not exciting standing for hours and hours in a line, especially because your anticipation just builds in that line.
Hmm.
And so the longer you spend in that line, that game has to be that much better. And if you get to the front of the line finally and you sit down and you play that game, and it's fine, or even if it's good, if you've just waited 2 hours for something that's good, that doesn't cut it.
Yeah, you're gonna kind of have a negative connotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't quite remember. Do you remember, I guess, the game that I'm thinking of? I think it was Path of Exile 2. I believe
Yes,
that's
and
the.
I don't think we didn't stand in that line because, we had other
No.
stuff to do. We were only there for a
Yeah.
certain amount of time, and the line was like wrapping around this massive booth.
Yeah, and that's the one where the line was like 2 to 4 hours, but once you got there, you got to play it for 2 hours. And I
Right.
don't know, I kind of just was like, what is the point of that?
Right. And I can't think of any game really that I want to sit and play for because you think of how the arena floor is open from what, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Okay.
Yeah,
So that's 8 hours. And so if you do, that's four games in a day of the, you know,
hundreds and thousands of
60 to
games.
70, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like there's so much more you can do. And so if you can take whatever your massive 100-hour experience is in a full game and shave it down into 20 minutes, that's what a demo should be there.
Yeah, that would have been, I think that would have been better. But I guess not to kind of, I guess, dunk on that one, but I feel like the two of us had very different experiences the first day. And we kind of just, like we said, we kind of walked around. Obviously, you
Hmm.
did the Animal Well demo day one. And I really didn't quite find anything that really caught my eye that I wanted to wait in line for on day one, except for a game called Hellskate, which also we kind of came across this game at the end of the day, and I had a really just tough experience waiting in this line. So I was the third person in line, and there was somebody that was playing it, and then the second person in line, they got up there, and they had the media pass, and they were demoing the game, and then they asked to interview, I guess, the developer that was present. So they stepped out, and then before I could, I guess, get the controller, somebody cut the line, and I wasn't gonna make a big deal about it. Obviously it's a public space. And then they finished, and then somebody else cut me again, and this person just like they had very clearly never played a game like this. Like, it's kind of like a Tony Hawk style type game. And it's, I guess if you're familiar with Hellskate, it's like Tony Hawk style, but it's like a roguelike. So there's also combat into the Tony Hawk.
I will say, I didn't get to play it, but just watching over your shoulder, and of course all of these other people that you're mentioning that we also had to watch, it looked sick. It looked very cool.
Yeah, it looked awesome. And the people like before me, they were like, "Oh man, like I got this crazy power up." Like and the developers like, "Wow, you got so lucky in getting that power up." And then the person before me that, I got cut twice. The final person in front of me, they got this crazy power up where they got to like just like some crazy airtime and like jump abilities. And like they were kind of like talking to the developer. They very clearly had never played a game like this. They're like, "I wonder if I could jump out of the map with this." And they were like, "Oh, I don't know if you could do that." And he was like, "I'm going to try it." And this dude spent like 10 minutes trying to like get out of the map. And it really got under my skin. But I also was like, like if you've never played one of these games, like a game like Tony Hawk, like the first time you like find a way to like break the game and get out of the map. I still remember the first time I did this on like one of the GBA games, and like it's kind of like the magic of the genre. So despite me like being upset, I was like, he's probably gonna buy this game and he's probably gonna be a fan of it, of the genre. But man, just like, and then I got into it. I got like super unlucky with my power ups. He's
Yeah.
like, wow, huh? I guess I'll have to tweak that. You didn't get any power ups in this first level. That's kind of odd. Sorry about that. So I just had like an ill-fated experience with the Hell's Gate game. But they
Sure.
were
And as you mentioned, it was right at the end of the day too. So we're just
they kicked us
looking at our
out. Yeah.
watches, trying to get you in to play it. And I don't think that's the developer's fault, or it's
No,
just
absolutely not.
these are the dice that you roll at these kinds of events,
Mm-hmm.
that it can be an amazing experience of getting to see so many different games and try out stuff that you've only, there aren't demos on Steam, or there aren't whatever, but there's a lot of variability with it as well, just depending on the how many people are there and the other external factors. But
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, this game was still in early access at the time. I actually don't know if it is still in early access. I guess I'll check really quick. But at the time, it was still in early access, so they were still tweaking it. It's awesome that there were obviously like the people in front of us clearly enjoyed it and had a great time. I'm just a little bit, I don't know. I personally did not have as good of an experience with it, but you're gonna get that. So yeah, this game is still in early access, but you can buy it for $25, and they're still tweaking it. I mean, the game looks sick. I still think I may get it at the next year when we're buying new games. But I'm definitely keeping my eye on it. I'm just kind of sad that I didn't have like the best run. But I guess you're not gonna have like, I mean, it's also a roguelike, so just like, by nature of the genre, it's gonna be different every time.
mhm.
But that was, I guess, pretty much our day one. And I guess before we move into day two, I guess I just want to say I was feeling a little jaded after after the first day. And I guess also if you want to talk about maybe like your first impressions of coming down to the floor and how this varied from year to year, I personally was feeling like there was more like a AAA presence this year
Mhm.
than there were in previous years where there was a lot more indies. I thought there was a lot more recognizable like AAA studios, or I guess publishers as well, such as like Nintendo and Pokemon had a huge presence. Square Enix with Final Fantasy, and there was like Larian with Baldur's Gate. They had a huge,
Right.
I don't know, but huge booth. And then there was also a huge Mountain Dew and Dunkin' booths as well. So it just felt a little bit more corporate this year than it has in the past.
A little bit. And I think a lot of that had to do with COVID, and the
Mm-hmm.
events having to, we mentioned this was the first one without masks. And when we went for the first time in 2022, I mean, it was really that, I think, like cemented some like initial magic in my mind of like what this event can be, because it was so many developers, like indie developers or just smaller developers, not even smaller, but I think Take Two had like a pretty big
Mm-hmm.
presence that first year, and I think I remember it last year as well. And that's a large developer, but it's not a behemoth like Pokemon, like Nintendo,
Yeah.
like Square, like
Yeah, like
some of these.
Devolver Digital, the last two
Right,
years had huge boosts, and I don't even think they were there this year.
right. And some of the Devolver games were like some of the most fun that we had. I know we talked about last year, and with those big booths, what you end up with is something, as we mentioned, big, large, flashy, lots of like staging, but it's like fewer opportunities, I feel like, to play the game. And it draws such massive crowds, you get, warded off. I wasn't going to stand in the line at Larry, and we thought about the Square Enix line for Final Fantasy, and that was, I mean, ridiculous how long you'd have to wait for that. But it was a huge setup,
It
but
was 2 hours for a 15-minute demo, but you got a cool bucket hat. So it's like,
the hat was very cool. Yes, and I know we were seriously considering for the hat. Versus, you go into the Kickstarter area, the PAX Rising, the just like
hmm
the small, and it's like maybe you wait behind one person, and that is like. But even in that area, there was not as much this year, and I know you feel the same way. There was not as much that was really like drawing me in, like big crowds around one tiny little folding table kind of stuff, which I've definitely
yeah,
seen before and experienced before. And I don't know why that is. There were games. Yeah, we'll get to, some other games that we played that were, or at least that we saw that were a lot of fun. But
hmm
on the whole, I do think it was a little more subdued. I still had a great time, but it was I left that first day, as you mentioned, kind of feeling like I don't really know where I should go next because nothing is really like, oh man, I can't wait to do that.
Yeah, I felt the same way. The only thing that I guess the consensus that we came to for day two was there was one big line that I really wanted to wait in, and
Hmm.
that was Sandland. So I guess maybe before we get to that, I guess I just want to say we had some delicious pizza. Do you want to shout out that if you're in
That
the
was
Boston area, that pizza spot was really good.
that was Ernesto's. That's in the North End. It's like the pizza. You go in and
Ernesto's,
yes, you order a slice,
they give you
but
two.
they give you two. Yes, and it's just a tiny little. If you're familiar with the North End of Boston, I mean, it's like a little Italy. It's so cool just to go in there and eat anywhere. The food's good everywhere, but Ernesto's is the famous pizza. So it was great to share that with you.
Yeah, that was stellar. Thanks for taking me there. I really liked that spot. I guess before we get to Sandland, did you have anything you wanted to maybe say before, or like anything related to day one?
No, no, I think Sandland is kind of a good place to go next because I know you were very excited for this game, and that was a game that we spent a very long time in a line for, and I have some opinions, but I'll let you start.
Yes, yes. Well, I guess really quick on Sandland, on the IP specifically, one of the reasons I really wanted to do it is this is one of Akira Toriyama's last things that he worked on in terms of just like an IP that he created. And this was originally a 12 issue manga series, obviously by Akira Toriyama. And that later became an anime film that released in 2023. I don't believe it was released worldwide because in spring of 2024, very recently, that anime film has now been broken up into a 13 episode miniseries that's on Hulu. And this game picks up directly after that. So the demo that we got to experience at PAX is different than the demo that's on Steam or on PlayStation. So you can still demo this game on, PlayStation or Steam. They may have something similar on Xbox. So I think that was just kind of it just felt really special that that was even there just because Akira Toriyama had recently passed away. And I guess if you're not familiar with him, he's the creator of, Dragon Ball. He's done a lot of the character designs for Dragon Quest. And I think both Brandon and myself really love Akira Toriyama's work. So that just kind of felt like a special thing that, I think that, had Brandon been there, I think that he would have really loved that. So it just felt like, for the show, I really wanted to, stand in line and wait for Sandland. And it was like a beautiful kind of like replica of the tanks from that world. And there were like 4 booths inside, and that was kind of you kind of like got to crawl into the tank, and there was like a little setup, and you could play the demo there. And I really liked it. I actually thought that it was very fun. So it was just in the demo that we played at PAX, it was like a little bit of a story sequence, and then it was kind of you could do some like God of War style type fighting. And then there was also, I think there may have been some vehicle combat. I don't quite remember. And
Oh
then at
yeah.
the end, it kind of has like a mini boss fight where I guess I think you're the demon prince. I think that's I guess what the character is. And that was really cool. I enjoyed that. I got some great photos of that. But yeah, I mean, we waited in line for about 2 hours, and they say it's a 15-minute demo, or if you complete it sooner, that's that. I completed it in about 10 minutes, but I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. So backstory with me, I was unfamiliar with the source material. I guess ashamed to admit I was unfamiliar with Akira Toriyama. Looking back through his stuff, I've definitely interacted here and there with, his body of work. It's hard not to.
Yeah.
But that my general area of interest and my experience was pretty far outside of that realm. So I was just going basically because, you had kind of filled me in a little bit. So, oh, let's do this. I'm like, okay. And like I mentioned, this is one of my favorite things about PAX, exploring stuff that you don't know. And we got in line, and immediately everybody was talking about, oh, can you, because this was 3 weeks, I think, not even maybe 3 weeks since he had died.
Yeah, I think it was within 2 weeks of him passing. So
Yeah. I mean, it
it
was
was very
so.
fresh on everyone's mind at the time.
Right, and everybody was talking about it, and that was kind of a cool experience to share with everybody.
Yeah, the camaraderie and the line about it was actually, yeah, I kind of forgot about that, but yeah, that was a very interesting
Yeah,
aspect.
but having no, real deep personal, like storied kind of relationship with this as the other people in line, by the time we got to the game, which again had, there was a 2 hour line. We played a lot of Marvel Snap in line, which
That was
if you
awesome.
heard, that was my game of the year that I mentioned on the podcast. So that was a lot of fun. But by the time we actually got up, we crawled into the tank and we got to play this game. I had no relationship with the material or the backstory or really any of the world around it. It was fine. To me, it felt like kind of a Borderlands meets like like you mentioned, you do have some vehicle combat, like driving around the tank. So like it was interesting. It was not worth 2 hours in line to me.
Yeah.
And I think this is an example of every minute you spend in line, your anticipation and your, this better be good kind of a feeling just grows and grows and grows. And especially because it was such an elaborate setup and everybody was talking so highly about Kira Toriyama, I thought this game has to blow my mind because I've invested so much time into it. And it was great and it was fun and it was whatever, but it was didn't like revolutionize video games. Like I didn't walk out of that a different person than I walked into it. And to me, and maybe my bar is too high, but if I'm investing that much time into it, it's got to, change my life. And it was fine, but it didn't. And, if I had a relationship with really with Dragon Ball or with anything, which I just did not, that he had worked on, I think that would be a really special experience for me. But it just wasn't for me, and that's okay.
Yeah, I guess just a little bit of context in regards to the IP. I think that it's one of his lesser known, I guess, properties, and it's kind of it was a mini series. It was only a 12
Hmm.
issue manga, and I think for like I guess just to compare it to something, I think like Naruto is over 70, and that's like the
Hmm.
whole story of Naruto is like over. I think it's like 78 issues or something like that. So 12, is very small. I think that's about half the size of like a Demon Slayer, or maybe
Sure.
even a quarter of the size of Demon Slayer, just for reference. So I think it's one of his newer ones, and I think that manga came out in 2003. I think that at the time people were like, "Oh, this is a good miniseries, like a good idea." And I guess in terms of, I mean, this game is already out. It's already been reviewed. It got very mixed reviews, kind of like a B movie. I think is what a lot of people are comparing it to. But a lot of people are like, yeah, like if you like, the manga or the TV show slash movie, it's very related to that, and it's very flashy. The art style is really what it is, but like it's not like an incredible game, but it's really just more about being in his kind of art style.
Sure.
So
And I have no problem with just, on principle going into an IP that I don't know anything about. I almost prefer that sometimes. Like take me to a new world. Like I don't know what's going on. Like,
yeah,
but
you need that sometimes.
the game, if I'm going to wait for 2 hours to do that, that game has to really, really take me there and really blow me away. And this one just didn't. And maybe that's, plays into some of the mixed reviews as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the brief time that I had with it, but I did kind of leave that demo like, damn, that's it. Because as soon as I finished it, they were kind of like trying to move the line along. They were like, all
Hmm.
right, well, thank you for playing. And I was like, oh, that's it? Like, I thought I got 15 minutes. They're like, oh, you beat it sooner. So, shoo. Which I didn't love that, but the time that I spent with it was good. But yeah, it's a tricky one because it's like I would not have waited in line for 2 hours for that, but I'm glad that we did in retrospect. So it's tough. It's a tricky one. But I guess I'll let you go over some of the games that you have on your list because I don't have quite as many as you. So
Sure.
if you'd
Yeah.
like to tackle another one.
Hit them kind of quickly, just go through a few. We didn't get to play, I think, everything, but I got to see, so many different things. And I'm glad that I did pretty immediately afterwards go through and throw everything I could remember onto my wish list on Steam. And some of the stuff has come out. One of a game that we had a lot of fun with, kind of a side scroller, was Grime, which I know has been out for a few years, but I think there was a new expansion that they were kind of pumping at PAX. This is a side scroller, kind of a slashy, you get a sword kind of a game.
Yeah, I would love to talk about this one before we move
Yeah,
on to the
sure.
next one. So this is actually by Akupara Games. It's published by
Yes.
Akupara Games. So they're, I guess, a familiar publisher to us. They're the
Yeah, we
ones that
loved their
publish.
stuff last year. We loved their booth. It was so cool last year.
Yeah, and they published the Astria Six-Sided Oracles, which made my Game of the Year list last year. So just to kind of find that they had this like kind of gritty, like side-scrolling, like almost Souls-like kind of Metroidvania was awesome. And I actually really thought that this was the most, this was my favorite demo. That,
Oh,
so I think that Sandland was probably the most memorable. Maybe a little bit of Stockholm syndrome because we waited in line for so long, but I really loved Grime, and I guess thank you to you for letting me play the whole thing. 'Cause I played the entire demo and I beat the boss at the end of the demo. And what this game does that's really interesting is you kind of are you're a celestial being that was kind of born out of the cosmos, and you have a black hole for a head. So I don't know, I'm kind of into it. But
yeah.
basically, you're fighting these monsters, and the parry, when you parry an attack, you throw your head into it, and it pulls the attacker into your black hole head, and that's how you gain health. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like a Souls like where you're like slowly like getting your health chipped away, but then all you have to do is successfully parry, and then you kind of swallow an enemy and get health.
And
And I
that's
thought,
such an interesting mechanic. It's so simple, but it really, as you play the game, it's so useful and you can really be so strategic with it.
yeah, I was really interested. I think like playing all the way through that demo and then getting to the boss where they, I just thought like it was just like a culmination of like so many cool ideas that I hadn't seen before. And it was like still familiar but new. And I just thought it was incredibly interesting. So that's my favorite demo that we tried. I guess that's a grime.
Yeah, Grime. It was a lot of fun. I think, yeah, I don't think I played it as long as you did, but I had a great time. And as you progress, you get power-ups, like permanent power-ups
Hmm.
that stick with you. Then, you die, you go back to a checkpoint, but now you have power-ups. So it helps you in that way kind of modify yourself. And the art style is really cool and grotesque. And that was a lot of fun. A game I didn't get to play, but got to see a lot of waiting for. I don't even remember what we were waiting for, but was Hell of an Office. I don't know if you remember this one.
Yeah, I'll open the Steam page right now.
Yeah, this game, it just looks so cool. I've got to try it. There's early access right now on Steam for $15, but it looks like Doom mixed with like neon white. Like you're just zooming around this like crazy hell type environment. It's just platforming through everything, but it's hell of an office, so it's like you're working through a
Yeah,
job
there's
as
like
well.
office themed, but yeah, this one
Desks and
was really
calendars and
flashy and stylish. I
yeah.
definitely remember seeing a lot of people play this, and it just was so cool seeing people just like zoom over lava pits onto like the next area and like use like a stapler to like just maul an enemy or something.
Yeah, so it didn't get to play that. It looks like a ton of fun, and reviews say very positive right now on Steam. So it is an early access, and kind of along the like Souls-like type thing. Deathbound. I don't know if you remember this one. This was another one that I remember seeing over some shoulders. It's a Souls-like with a really cool art style. It's like party
I
based.
do not remember this one.
Like I said, I remember seeing it, and it looked like a lot of fun, and like a lot of people were having fun. But again, this was a game that I think had a long line, and we couldn't get to it. And there was no demo or anything on Steam yet, but it did look like a lot of fun, and some of the gameplay visuals that they have on there are a lot of fun. I'd like to talk about Enter the Chromosphere because I know you have some opinions on it, and it looked really cool, and I thought it was interesting, kind of a concept.
Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of just speak to this one a little bit. So this one, there was a lot of buzz around this one. We had got this recommended to us by some people, and I had kind of heard a couple of people like talking about it. There's a couple of people in line. If you're in line for a long time, you talk to the people around you. You kind of say like, oh, like, what's something that like what's been your favorite thing this PAX? Like, what's something that you'd recommend like going to if we haven't checked it out? And Enter the Chronosphere came up a couple of times, so there's a bit of a buzz around this game this year, and it's got a really interesting art style. I actually really like the art to it, and it's kind of like an isometric game where you're moving around, and it's turn-based. So every time you move, the enemy moves, and
Yeah, they were drawing comparisons to Super Hot, but turn-based.
yeah, I have never played Super Hot. The only thing I'll say about it is it seemed like a really cool evolution of, turn-based combat and like kind of real-time combat, but I just didn't click for me personally. But man, the art style just looks freaking sick.
Yeah, it is. It's got to be like the prettiest game or one of the prettiest games.
Yeah, that we saw this year. Yeah, this was awesome.
Sure. I think that I watched you play it. I don't remember playing this myself. So,
Yeah, this is definitely one to keep your eye on, and I'm personally gonna wait for the reviews.
Hmm.
before I decide if I'm going to check it out. Just because I know that people really liked the demo, but it didn't quite click with me personally. But still very interested in it.
So yeah, so that was Enter the Chromosphere. I'm just jumping around a little bit through my list here because I threw a lot of stuff on it. Unwound was something I remember watching. This was in kind of the PAX Rising showcase, I think. Another really bizarre kind of a platformer where you're this ball of yarn jumping
Mm-hmm.
around, and it's just the physics of it all looked very cool, and something that I just watching some people play over their shoulder thought, that's got to go on my wish list.
Yeah,
And
that's
this,
so funny to me because I was kind of looking through your list and I opened all the Steam pages that you had linked,
uh,
and I don't remember this one at all. Like, I think that it really, kind of speaks to how we spent the whole day together, all 3 days, and I don't even recognize some of the games that you've put on your wish list. So I think that that speaks to how, obviously everyone can have, a different experience, but also what you bring into this does affect your experience there.
sure. And I felt like I had to hunt more, getting to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, just hunt more to find games that I thought were interesting. And, just with the time management, which I can't blame the whole convention. Oh, I didn't get to play games because the lines were so long. I mean, if we came in with a good plan, or if we really took time to like map out a plan of attack, yes, I'm sure we could get to play more than we did. But I want to be able just to walk in and go up to stuff and have a good time. And I think that maybe the concentration of where the good games were and the amount of just the density of how many really great, memorable games there were was a little bit lower this year. Maybe that's why it was harder.
Yeah, I feel like when you go to these things, I feel like there's a lot of fun in just like chasing your bliss and like
Yeah,
just, experiencing something new. I will also say that I think this year just may not have been as catered to us as much because there
sure.
were some humongous lines for things that I'm like, I don't have no interest in that. Like, I couldn't care less about this thing. And there were like hundreds of people waiting in lines for things that I'm like, I would never wait in line. I wouldn't even wait in line 15 minutes, let alone, the 2, 3 hours that it's saying here. So I think that it really just varies from year to year.
There's only one more thing I think I want to mention on my wish list. I have a lot of stuff that I added to it. Most of it is in that category of like, well, this looks really cool. And so I just kind of want to keep my eye on it. But the
Mm-hmm.
last big one that has actually entered into my regular gaming rotation is Final Fantasy 14. As we
Okay.
mentioned, we weren't able to do the demo. This was of their newest expansion, but it was front and center right as soon as you entered the arena. It was such a huge display. There were so many people. There had been all this drummed up recently about the Final Fantasy VII remake. I had never, ever interacted with the Final Fantasy series at all, didn't know anything about it, and thought, you know what, whatever. Let me just look into this a little bit, and quickly found out Final Fantasy 14 is an MMO. I 10, 15 years ago was pretty into World of Warcraft and kind of fell out of it and never really had an MMO that I did too much, but I was open to it and thought, you know what, let's try it. And there's a free trial version, and it sucked me in just jumping onto that free trial. And this is a game that's been out at least 10 years, I think, by now. Final Fantasy 14, and they were again pumping their newest expansion, so this wasn't like a brand new anything. But this is probably the biggest, and maybe in a few months after Animal Well's been out, I'll have a different opinion. But as far as my biggest takeaway from PAX has been this game. It's
And
just
you're still playing this.
I am, yeah, I am, and I've just been leveling up my character and getting acquainted kind of with the world, of that MMO. But it's been a long time since I played an MMO, and this just kind of seemed to scratch the right itch for me, to get me back in. And so it's just crazy to me that like the biggest impact that I took from PAX wasn't even the game I played, which is,
Yeah.
I like have to sit and parse that out in my head. But anyway, yeah, that wraps up my wish list and my, biggest kind of exciting things that I saw at PAX.
Yeah, I'm really interested in Final Fantasy 14. I mean, one, you've kind of been talking to me about it, kind of off the, I guess when we chat just between the two of us, and it just looking at the photos and like seeing the gameplay like at PAX, like it looks really interesting. And I think guess that you can Is it you can play up to like a certain level for free and then you have to kind of pay for it?
There's a level cap, but I mean the level cap is it's like level 70 or like something really high. And I've been playing this free trial what for like a month and a half now since PAX has happened, and just in the way that I've been playing the game, I haven't run into anything where it's like, oh, sorry, you can't do this because you're on the free trial. There's no time limit. There is a level cap. I believe you can't access like the marketplace, like to trade items with other
Hmm.
players, which I'm sure is like a huge hindrance once you get into those upper levels. But just kind of starting out and being a low level guy, just wandering around and doing some quests and some dungeons here and there, it's not, it hasn't become a big deal yet. Which, I mean, as far as free trials go, I mean, I'm having so much fun that if tomorrow I hit a wall and it says, "Oh, you have to pay now," it's like, okay, I think I will, because you've got me
Interesting.
sucked into this and it's a lot of fun.
Are you interested in any other like Final Fantasy now? Or I mean like what is it about this? Is it like the combat? I mean it's turn based, right?
No, no. So it's if you've played World of Warcraft, it's a similar kind of a just,
Oh, is it you kind of just like I guess like click and it kind of like swings your sword or whatever?
yeah, I mean, each of the moves are mapped to like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the keyboard.
So are you playing this on your PlayStation or are you
I
playing
am
this on your
No, I'm playing it on my laptop, on my
Wow.
computer.
Okay.
There is a version for consoles. I played so much World of Warcraft on a computer that I could not imagine having to do that with a controller. It almost just doesn't make sense to me with a controller. And I know it's very popular for people to do it on consoles, and so good for you. To me, it just makes more it just makes more sense with a mouse and keyboard and just kind of the different menus to navigate and all of that. It's just that you need a mouse and keyboard for that.
Okay. All right. But yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to keep my eye on that. You have to keep me in the loop if you continue to play.
Yeah, if you've never played an MMO, it's like it's a learning curve of like what is this kind of a game and how does it work? Like it's a very unique category, but it has reignited a little flame that has been very quietly burning within me
Oh,
that
that you
I'm
need
I'm
to get back into an MMO.
yeah, that I'm kind of excited to feed a bit. So, yeah, PAX.
That's awesome. There is one other game that I want to bring up from your list,
Okay.
and that is called No Love Lost. This is
Okay.
a free to play game. I actually just downloaded it
Okay.
on my
See, and
Steam
that's
Deck.
that's why I didn't get into it is because this was one that again, like so many others I saw and I was like, "Oh, that looks kind of cool." And I threw it on the list and really just never dove into it as much afterwards. But it was out by the time we saw it at PAX and it still is out. So have you had a chance to actually play it?
I have not, but I just
Mm.
downloaded it in the prep for this, and it just looks really exciting. So I think we might have to try this and maybe report back. But it's free to play on Steam, and it kind of looks like like a third person part of it, and just like traversing around the world is kind of part of it. So very interested in checking this one out. Do you have anything else to add?
Sure. Well, looking at the description and from what I remember seeing the gameplay at PAX, it's a PvP VE, right? And so there's a PvP elements, but it's as an extraction game, it seems to me like a Helldivers type where it's like, all right, let's jump down out of the world, do some crazy stuff, finish objectives, kill whatever, which I guess would also include killing other players, which is, not really an element of Helldivers right now. And then exiting, which there's more than just Helldivers in that category, but it's something that I would be interested in. So yeah,
Yeah, I think we'll have to check it out. Yeah, I didn't realize it says extraction shooter, looter shooter, open world, co-op, PvP. It's got it all. Yeah, so
all the buzzwords.
its reviews are not good on Steam though, so they're mixed.
They're mixed, which has been a little bit of my hesitation as well. Like, oh well, maybe it's not as fun as it
Yeah,
looks, but I
yeah.
don't know.
I
I
guess
haven't
we'll
played it.
report back on that one. So I guess I just want to. I guess I'll just go over a couple of the things that caught my eye really quick, and then I think we can maybe end on the board game that we demoed, which was a lot of fun.
So much fun.
Okay, so I guess something that we haven't mentioned, but we've mentioned it on our PAX episodes before, is obviously there are a lot of video games, but there are a ton of board games, ton of card games. I mean, there's all kinds of games, and I think that that's really awesome that PAX can kind of facilitate a place for all of those. So this game is actually, you may have heard of it. It's actually available to buy on Amazon. It's a 1 to 2 player card game. And it has a really cute, adorable black and white comic style visuals. And the kind of task is just getting through your day. And one of the ways that you can, speed up your day and be more efficient is with caffeine. And that's one of the mechanics of it. And it just like looks really cool. And this game is called Self Careless. And it's kind of a black and white, just like card game that you could play with yourself or one other person. That's available on Amazon for $24.99. Obviously, if you want to go to your local board shop or board game shop and pick it up there, that'd probably be better. But it's $25 and it's out, and they had like the demo of this available at a couple of different booths. So very, very interesting. I thought that it caught my eye. Another game that caught my eye, this is actually pretty cool. This is self-described as a 2D story-driven action-adventure game inspired by 80s anime. And this game is called Evolutus Duality. The visuals of this looked incredible. Unfortunately, I got stuck, like trapped in the demo. They had to reset it. And I had already been playing it for 10 minutes. So I was like, I don't really want to do that again. But man, this looks so pretty. That's Evolutus Duality.
Yeah, we spent some time with this game because we both really wanted to make it work. And again, this is just, you're at a convention. And so some of these games are earlier in their development than others. And we just kind of ran into some bugs right at the beginning that didn't make any sense, but it was almost just more fun to kind of explore because
Yeah, and just kind of look at it.
yeah, because I mean it bills itself as a 2D game, but it's really there's like you're working in 3 dimensions, and it's such a cool kind of a side-scrolling cyberpunk kind of an atmosphere that I think I remember like looking at it across the aisle there in the showroom and like, okay, Blake, this is your game. You got to play this. This is like
Yeah, like we gotta check this out right now.
this is for Blake. This is like love letter to Blake right here.
I'm probably gonna get this when it comes out, just because I mean, it kind of almost has like some visual novel elements to it as well. I'm definitely gonna check this one out. I mean, the visuals look too cool for me not to, I think.
Hmm.
So I actually want to talk about a game called Rightfully Barry Arms
Yes.
next. This game is really cool because I mean, at least it's the only game that I've been interested in that we've seen all 3 years.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like a bullet hell roguelike. And it's very interesting, like getting to see it like 2 years ago and then last year and then like playing it this year. I had a much better time playing it this year. The visuals are just really cool. You kind of like walk around as a teddy bear with like this humongous gun, and it was really awesome. I think a lot of people, I mean, I think they even, described it in this way when we were there, but they're like, oh, it's very similar to Enter the Gungeon, but
Yes.
so if you're into that kind of game, definitely check out Rightfully Barry Arms. Still in early access, but it's really cool.
And
I was really, really into this one.
if I'm not mistaken, this is yeah, it's a roguelike. And so, I mean, every time you roll, you go in and, the map layouts and the room layouts are different. It's got a Binding of Isaac kind of a thing to it. I don't know if you've played
I
that.
haven't, but I'm familiar with it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but if you're a bear, rightfully Barry Arms, you're this little cute teddy bear just like whooping everybody with these crazy guns. I think I tried it and just had such a hard time, just because you got to grind. It's a roguelike, so you're grinding, but it does suck you in, and it is so much fun. And if you have that kind of a mentality, I mean, yeah. And I will say, I think last year you did not care for this game.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily like the proctors I think that just I don't know, they rubbed me the wrong way a little bit.
Interesting. So it's cool for me to see your opinion shift. Not I don't know if 180 is it, but to really change on this game.
Yeah, I left this one a lot more positive, and I went from like being excited about it one year to not, to
Hmm.
kind of writing it off, and now I'm back in, and I think I'm going to check it out when it comes out. And I guess it's worth mentioning, every time I played I saw something totally different, and like
Yeah.
the guy that was playing before me, whatever he must have gone like a completely different way or something, because whatever he saw and whatever he was doing was just totally different from what I saw and what I was doing. And it was really interesting, just kind of seeing that and how this game can just be so different from run to run. So yeah, that's Rightfully Barry Arms. I guess I have a couple more things. So this is a publisher. I guess shout out the publisher first. So they had a booth where they had like just a ton of games, and these games just look so interesting. And I guess their Steam page is Gravity Co. Ltd. And this is the publisher. And they had just like a ton of really visually interesting games. A game that you and I both demoed was called Final Night, which is a really cool art style. And Final Night, they have a demo on Steam, so you can check that one out. Do you remember this one?
I do. I had to pull up the page and and find it to remember it because I didn't remember it just by the title. But this game, I will be honest, just overwhelmed me. It's
Mm-hmm.
a
There was a lot
party.
going on that it didn't demo very well.
No, but it's a, specific type of game for a specific kind of person. I mean, you have a party of, it looks like four, characters. You control each of them, but it's an RPG where you're going through and, just slashing stuff and I've never played games or I've never succeeded well with games where you have to control each member of your party and you have to be the mage and the rogue and the whoever and the paladin all at once and keep all of that balance. It takes so much brain space. If that's for you, then this is for you. But it was a lot to demo.
Yeah, I've played a couple games like this. For me personally, I didn't switch. I kind of stayed as one as my main, and I kind of switched just like if I had like was low health, I'd switch to somebody that had more health. But it was kind of like Castle Crashers, where you're kind of like there's different lanes, and you kind of attack people in that lane, but then you can kind of like move a little. So I thought that was really cool. There's also another game that they had there called Wizman's World Retry, which is kind of a very long title. We didn't get to demo this one because the line for this one was very long. So I
Hmm.
guess I'm going to spell this because it makes no sense. It's capital W, lowercase I, capital Z, and then MANS. So Wizmans, but the W and the Z are capital. And then world, capital W, world, and then RE, capital RE, semicolon, try. So it's Wisman's World RE, semicolon, try. Visually, it looks very cool, though.
Yeah, that's there's so many different people that travel from like all over the world to showcase these games, and some of
Hmm.
it translates better, I think, into English than others. But I think each year we had fun talking to some developers from Poland.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
that there, been obviously developers from like Japan and kind of a lot of those, the anime type games, which I know we've talked about, already with Sandland, but even more anime, type stuff that we, got to see. And that, again, I don't think was for me, but it's just cool to kind of see what's out there. You get to experience, like I say, there's no algorithm, so it's just you and the floor. So, there's such a breadth of different video games that work for some people, don't work for other people, and it's cool to see all of that represented.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I guess a couple other from this specific publisher was Little Gods of the Abyss. And this was kind of like a little bit like a puzzle platformer. It had a very cute art style, kind of moved from level to level. It's $14.99. I thought it was a little bit buggy at the time, so I would wait for a sale for this one. But if you're into the art style, this one was very cool. That's Little Gods of the Abyss. And I think the coolest one that we played, or at least for me in my opinion, was Kamiboko Mythology of Cube. And that's spelled Kamibako. And then Mythology of Cube. And that there's a demo available on Steam. This one was really interesting because you kind of like walked around kind of like a classic RPG. And whenever you walked onto a tile, it would like kind of populate.
Yeah, that was so innovative. I'd never seen that kind of art style before.
Yeah, so like you kind of like look at like you're looking top down and you see all these tiles on the map, and it looks like you're in a forest. And then if you walk to the forest, like trees will pop up around you, or if you see like a field, you'll walk into the field, and then the field will pop up. And then if you kind of like walk towards the mountains, and you can like walk up to a mountain, and then the mountain will pop up, and like you can't really climb up the mountain, but the mountain is there. So it was just really interesting. It was very unique visually. So I want
Yeah,
to give a shout out to that one.
definitely. I mean, it was like the game was building itself around you, which was just cool.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. That one was so cool. And then I have one more game that I want to talk about, and then I want to talk about Pokemon a little
Yes.
bit. So this last game was called Too Many Captains. And they took the Steam page down. So if you'll recall, Andrew, this was the one where there were like four different screens, and we were each controlling like one part of the
Oh my
screen.
gosh, yes, I was looking for that game. They took down the Steam page?
Yeah, so the Steam page was taken down, and I think that this was is going to be a kind of interesting conversation because obviously, like we go to these, to experience different games, but I think that they, a lot of the developers and publishers, they go to, to kind of test things out a little bit. So the developer of this game is called Pixelcast Games, and they have another game on Steam called Gunrunner. So I guess that's the only game that they have out. So I want to shout that one out just because that's available on Steam, and that's Gunn Runner no space. So Gunrunner with two N's no space, and that's by Pixelcast Games. And this game was so interesting. You kind of, like I said, it's called Too Many Captains. You're steering a ship, and there's like four different segments of the screen, and you're kind of like using your controllers to make the section of the screen bigger, and then you can kind of like, like flip a switch. After you flip like the power switch, somebody in another section can flip another switch. And it's very much like it was a very chaotic kind of game, and there's like one screen had like a radar. So like you kind of had to like kind of move the barrier of the screen to like it's very hard to explain, but like to see the radar, and then if you're like, okay, we've got a rocket incoming, we have to move the radar up so we can't see it so we can fire the weapon. It was just like chaotic and so fun, and it was just like the most interesting idea I've seen at PAX. It's one of the most memorable and experimental games, and obviously they took the Steam page down, but I'm just excited to see what they do with this idea next and like what it evolves into.
Yeah, it was really hard to even figure out what to do, but once we figured it out, it was, I don't know how much fun I had playing it, but that kind of a thing was like I feel like I've said everything is my favorite part of PAX, but like really just like that's the revolutionary kind of like, is this even a game? Like, it's taking the genre of what is a game and like let's try something with it. And it's not derivative of anything. It's a new thing. And, getting to experience that alongside, the AAA most polished whatever stuff, like where else do you get to do that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I thought that that was just really interesting, just to kind of see this idea. And like you said, I don't know if I had a ton of fun with it, so I don't know if the idea worked, but the
Hmm.
idea itself was just so cool and interesting.
Yeah, somebody's trying something out there, which is so cool.
Yeah, I'm so happy that that exists and that we got to try that because it kind of actually, was looking at the pictures that I took of it, and they had it was like they had a whole booth, but there was only like this one monitor, one laptop kind of running this demo. And the guy that created it was standing there. And I don't know if you recall this, but they had like the one monitor setup, and they kind of had like a cardboard cut out around it that kind of like expanded the things that were on the screen out a little bit onto the cardboard.
Right. Yeah, because this is like a game you need an instruction manual for. It felt very classic, like NES or something, where you dive into this game and you're like, what is happening? But you have to open the box that the cartridge came in and be like, oh, this is what it is. This is what's going on. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was, and I feel like I want to give a shout out. This was on my list. I skipped it earlier. But just speaking of like a display where there's like one laptop and nothing going on, I just want to mention Spectra. We didn't even get to
Okay.
play this game. We did not get to play this game, but there was a person standing there with a little computer or a TV screen or whatever that was just like showing kind of what this game could be. And they explained the game to us, and it left kind of this like lasting impression of like, oh, this could be an interesting game. And like to just go out there, not even have a demo, not even really have gameplay, but like to hook somebody on a game and to have space in this. I mean, that takes a lot of, I don't know, courage is the right word, but like all these games have to start somewhere, and having a good idea can, I think, really be enough in an environment like that to make an impression.
Yeah, and they certainly did make an impression. I've actually followed them on Twitter, and I have them on this game on my wish list. It's called Spectra, and it's spelled Spectra.
Hmm.
And I think that what they have on Steam is a grimy, neon-filled immersive sim set in a dystopian alternative history in 1972. And it's sneak, fight, and trick your way through a beautiful, ugly city and discover the world of Spectra. And
Yeah.
it's just so interesting. And they kind of just showed some screenshots and some trailers and like what the game could be, kind of like you said. And that was awesome. That was so cool
Yeah,
that,
it's got like a BioShock kind of a vibe with like a little, like cyberpunk kind of a thing, but yeah, I mean, this is what this should be, right? Like it's okay, it's cool to have the big Square Enix and Nintendo and whoever come out and, show their latest, flashiest version of whatever series they've been working on, but like here's one person in a laptop talking about something they can't even let you play yet, and like that's also in that space, and it's just as cool if not cooler.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's kind of why you go to PAX. You just get all these cool
Yeah.
experiences. And speaking of the AAA,
Yes, the main event.
the main event, yeah, nothing I guess is more AAA than Pokemon. And Pokemon had a humongous presence there this
Huge,
year.
huge.
Now I guess you are not the biggest Pokemon fan, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not against Pokemon, I've watched some episodes of the show. I played Pokemon Stadium 2 was like my game on the Nintendo 64. I didn't have a lot of handheld experience with Pokemon in the Game Boys or Nintendo DS or anything like that, but I know that you do, and
Yeah,
you have.
Brandon and I are sickos about Pokemon, man. So I guess what I was gonna say is that off the show, I think on the show a little bit too, Brandon and I have kind of speculated that they feel that there's I guess a sense that Nintendo needs to do some, I guess like damage repair and reputational repair. So
Hmm.
I think that it just kind of fits into the narrative that Brandon and I have kind of crafted about I guess our speculation on Pokemon. That they had two humongous booths. One booth, they let you demo the latest game, Scarlet and Violet. They had a DLC demo, and if you, I guess, drew a little, they had like a big chalk wall, and if you drew your favorite Pokemon, you got a pack of Pokemon cards. And we waited in line to do that, and then we also waited in line to do a demo of the card game, which was really fun. I've never played the
Yeah,
card game before. I guess maybe would you like to talk about this before I do?
sure. I mean, and I certainly had never, played the trading card game, really either, and had no clue what it was. This was something that, like, I remember being in elementary school, and like some people would have Pokemon cards. It's like, oh man, and then I would get like one or two, and we'd, oh, can you believe you? But what do you do with them? I don't know. I just had them, and so we waited in a line that moved very quickly, I will say. It looked like a long line, but we discovered that it moved fast. To get up, and they would grab four of us, and then they actually taught you how to battle, how to play this card game. And I had fun with it.
Yeah, they actually, I guess, to their credit, there were volunteers, and they did an excellent job of kind of just explaining, how to play the game and what the game is, and they gave us half of a competitive deck on the way out, and it was really
Hmm.
awesome. I guess to just have the demo, but also to have somebody there to kind of facilitate it. And of course, you got some cards at the end, which is really nice and cool. I've kind of since gone off the deep end a little bit. I've sp- I've spent about a little over $100 on Pokemon cards. I've got like a couple Elite Trainer boxes, if you know what that is, and I think I'm actually gonna I'm stopping because this was such a cool way to get into it and it made me excited for Pokemon. But something that, we've talked about card games on the show a little bit. They really want you to have that monetary investment. And even after spending like $100, I can't even complete half of a competitive deck. Like the Pokemon Company gave us half of a competitive deck, and I
Hmm.
can't even make the other half of that with spending $100. So I'm out officially. So not the most friendly game for your wallet.
Sure. Well, but in that, I think has to come with jumping in on a trading card game that's been going on for what, 20, 30 years, at least here. This is like jumping into the middle of a moving train. Like it's hard to really get yourself up to speed, and that's kind of why I thought I have so much fun with this demo is because it's always been so intimidating to me to get into any kind of like
Hmm.
trading card game. Pokemon, talk about
Magic.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic obviously is the huge one with a huge presence there at PAX because this is something people have been doing for decades and they've built up these decks for decades. And now it's like I'm just a brand new person to this well-established world. And I felt like they made it so accessible to us in that booth. And so I'm a little, I guess, disheartened to kind of hear that you've tried to kind of take that and turn it into something and have been met with such a hard path ahead of you.
Yeah, I don't really have a good answer for or anything positive to say on that because it's really been tough. I guess I will. The only thing I'll say that you can, I guess there is a like if you're interested in this, the Pokemon trading card game has an app and they have a demo that is I guess the demo that we had was a lot more fun, but this goes over everything that we went over in the demo. And if you just get the Pokemon TCG Live app, you'll be able to get that and you can have the same, pretty much the same demo, although I will say it was more fun to do it with the physical cards and having someone there. But you can learn how to play the game. And they actually, if you make a free account with the Pokemon TCG Live, they give you a ton of decks. So you can actually go and like play the game. And I've recommended this to Andrew. But there's two sides of this. And that's one, you get the starter decks that they'll let you play with. Very fun. Haven't won. I haven't won a single match. I've just been creamed. Even on so they have like a casual mode and a ranked mode. Even on casual, I just get absolutely obliterated, which is tough for morale. But there's the other side of this is every Pokemon pack you get, there's like a card in there with a QR code. And if you scan that QR code in the app, you get a pack of digital Pokemon cards. So I had probably, I know after buying some physical Pokemon packs in real life, I had about 100 or so of these. And then my girlfriend's brother also collects Pokemon cards. And he doesn't use these. So he gave me about a stack of 50. So I had like more packs for the digital card game than I did for, like real life packs.
Mhm.
And I have not gotten like anything that's really even competitively viable in those either. And that's like over 100 packs is kind of the how many cards I had. So it's tough. That's all I'll say. I haven't given up on it completely. I may get like a box every quarter or so. I guess we'll see. Maybe at Christmas time I'll ask for some Pokemon cards, but man, it just really just kind of having such a good experience in person and then kind of going into it a little bit more and just a morale dip has been tough.
Yeah, well, and I mean, like I said, it was encouraging to see that they were trying,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think if they're doing this at other conventions and, now they have the app where you can, play virtually. I'm not as familiar, I guess, with all of the mythos that you and Brandon have built up about Pokemon, but if they're really serious about this, then they've got to get serious about making it something that people can continue on into, even if, after they do get into. And if you've already sunk hundreds of dollars into it, then either you're doing something hilariously wrong, or more likely there's just they need to clear up that path and to make it easier for the new players in order to expand.
Yeah, they actually, I guess I will say, I think that Brandon and I are going to talk about this in a later episode, so we'll keep this a little bit brief. But they
Sure.
have announced at the latest Pokemon Day that they are releasing a new app in 2024, and that's going to have a new, simpler version of the game. So I guess something, we talked about Magic, something that they do in order to keep their game competitively viable, they remove cards. And there's
Right.
some cards that aren't allowed. You can't play, and you have to stay up on. You have to continually invest in the new cards in order to continue to play, which I think a lot of people don't like because if you
Sure.
buy a card and you get a really awesome card, and it may only be viable for a few years before, this card that was super rare that I spent $200 on, I can't even use it anymore. Like that's got to sting. With Pokemon, any card is still viable. So like if you have an original Bulbasaur, you can still play that card. And I think that that's really cool. I had not realized that until getting into this. So, oof. It's almost imparsible how many options there are and how many strategies. So, it's very, I mean, you could come across anything. And they have announced that they're redoing the card game in a mobile form, and that's gonna come out later this year. And I think that they're really kind of trying to copy, kind of the success that Marvel Snap has had and some other games that are similar. So
Sure.
very interested to see that. Whenever we know more, I'm sure we'll talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, look forward to that.
And I'll make sure you're in the know as well, Andrew.
Appreciate that.
I guess I have two things that I think we can talk about, and then maybe we can wrap up. We went and saw a panel that was very good, and I want to talk about
Oh yeah.
that.
So much fun.
Yes, and then I think there's also the board game that we tried. What would you like to end on?
Why don't I quickly, because we're talking about these trading card game, why don't we talk about this board game really quick? This
Yes,
is something that I didn't just put this on a wish list, I actually went out and bought. And I tried to buy it at PAX, but it was on Sunday and they had
they
sold out
sold
of
out.
every
Yeah.
copy because it was so much fun. And it's been around for a while. And, PAX isn't always about the new stuff. Like I mentioned with Final Fantasy, it's just finding something that you personally hadn't been exposed to. And this was Dice Throne. And it's a, 1v1 dice tabletop game. The way I pitched it to my girlfriend to talk her into playing it was it's like Yahtzee, but a little more complicated, which is half true.
Maybe a stretch, but it kind of works.
Sure. Each box that you buy of the game comes with two characters, and they're two different characters depending on what boxes you buy. And the beauty of it is each individual character can play another one. So if you buy three boxes, you've got six characters, and every one of those can play every other one. And I can't do the math in my head quickly enough to tell you how many different combinations that is, but it really keeps it fresh each time. And you start with a certain amount of health, you get, certain amount of, combat points, which, determine how many moves you can do in a turn, and then you're just rolling dice to figure out, which dice you can match. The dice have numbers on them, but also symbols. So you're matching numbers and symbols and doing damage and healing, and each character has like really unique abilities. So that's why I say Yahtzee, but like way more complicated because like way more complicated. And I gotta tell you, I sat down to play this with you, and I looked at this board, and I'm like, this is gonna be a bad time. And the guy explained it, and we did it, and I had a great time. It was so much fun. What do you think?
It looked like it was something that was way more complicated than it is.
Yes,
And as soon as you like get into it, and obviously like that is the magic of demoing these board games at these conventions, is because you have somebody that works for the company that's probably played it 1,000 times, and they like have a very scripted way of explaining it. They talk you
right.
through it, they show you, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry about that. That'll come up in a minute." Or and like
Yeah,
they really are very good at like hand holding you and guiding you through how to play these board games, which I think is awesome because I mean, from the onset, it looks very complicated. But the one that we got to do, like you said, there's a bunch of different characters. We got to do the samurai and I think the gunslinger. And that was
yes.
just such a cool matchup. I was obviously the samurai. And I guess the part that Andrew didn't mention is he absolutely crushed it, got a Yahtzee on roll one, which kind of is like a special ability and
Yeah.
absolutely put me in the ringer. Like I had a great like first turn, but after Andrew, I just like could not get my bearing back under me, and I was like in a huge deficit, but I was still able to like to have a good time and have a shot. But it just like the dice didn't roll in my favor, and I guess that's dice thrown. I guess that's the roll of the dice. But man, it was just so cool because like I guess in these box sets you get two characters and they really complement each other very well, and it just seemed like the matchup between the samurai and the gunslinger was really interesting with like I had something called like bleed and I don't quite remember what you had, but I think you could like stun me or something with like your like shooting fast or something. The characters really like had some tight matchups and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and each character has, like buffs and debuffs, and the debuffs in particular that you can, put upon your opponent. And, so it's kind of take a step back. It's almost funny to think about like the game that I ended up purchasing. It was the Huntress and the Tactician, I think. And so you've got like this one character is this like woman of the jungle who has like a pet tiger, And so you're talking about like a tiger attacking this like war general tactician, so you're inflicting bleed, which would be like losing points every turn or like whatever. Like there's the debuff that I'm putting on you, but could easily put that on the samurai or on the gunslinger or on, any other character, and just kind of how these worlds can clash, especially because, and I haven't tried this, and we didn't get to do this in the demo, but they have a whole Marvel line of these games.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it kind of went in conjunction with like the X-Men 97 or whatever.
Yeah, and I think they've introduced a few different Marvel characters over the last few years recently, and you can play those Marvel, as far as I'm aware, I'm almost positive you can play those Marvel characters with just like the
Like the
base
base characters.
characters.
Yeah, I think they
Yeah, so
mentioned that. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, so many different possibilities and just so much fun, and that's, I think, the measure of a good board game at this level or a good tabletop game is like something that is complicated, but once you play it is like not hard at all. Like you're in it and you just get it. And I find that with Radlands, which was the game last year that I had to buy immediately, which was so much fun, which I still continue to play. And then also just like with like the classic Settlers of Catan, I mean, that's like everybody's like go to, like this is the game, which I've explained it for the first time to a lot of people. It is very overwhelming, but you have
Then
so much
once
fun
you get
playing it.
into it, you just have the best
Yeah.
time.
And it's so different each time, which all of these games I've mentioned are, just with the nature of it. It's not playing Monopoly. It's not, you're not just trying to get Boardwalk and Park Place every time in the same
Hmm.
exact way. Like it's so different and so fresh each time that's what I enjoy so much. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. This game was awesome. I think that this was a highlight for me, this Dice Throne game, and I'm gonna buy a set of this. I guess friend of the show and guest on the podcast, Carter. I guess if you're listening, Carter, hello. He has a bachelor party later in the year, and I am gonna get this for Carter and his fiance, Leah. I'm getting this for them as kind of like a wedding present, but also I'm gonna take it on the bachelor party and teach people how to play this because I think this game is just so fun that
Yeah.
it's like I think that one they're gonna enjoy it, but two I'm just excited to explain this with a group of guys and then just like go head to head, and I think that's gonna be so much fun. And I guess the last thing, I guess, do you have anything else you want to add?
No,
Um,
I think I'm excited to kind of end with this panel because while we have talked mainly about what we have done on the arena floor, where they just have there's so much more to PAX. There's a main stage where they have like programmed events throughout the day and each day that we've never even really gone to
I didn't even really
because
know it was there, so I think
right,
we'll have to check that out.
yeah, so there's that kind of programming, like an actual theater. There are free play rooms where you can just sit down at a PlayStation and play a bunch of games, or at a PC, which we've done each year, which has been a
Hmm.
lot of fun with the
Yeah.
PC. But there's also panel events that go on, all throughout the day, each day. And this was one you were very excited for that again, was not. I had a Nintendo DS. I wasn't as deep into it as you were, but you were excited. I was like, let's go. And I had so much fun just being in a room full of people that were so excited about one thing.
Yeah, yeah, it was really awesome. So I guess just really quick, the panel was called Between Two Screens, a Nintendo DS retrospective. And I actually knew one of the panelists, so I just want to give a shout out to them. Dave Jackson, hello. He has a podcast called Tales from the Backlog. I should have brought this up earlier in the show. This is right at the end, so I guess you'll have to listen to the whole episode to hear about
It was very nice
Dave
to
and his
meet you,
show.
Dave. That was a lot of
Yes.
fun.
Yeah, it was nice to meet Dave, and he had a friend as well, and he was there with Katie from Left Behind Game Club, is her show. So go check those two out, Katie from Left Behind Game Club and Dave Jackson from Tales from the Backlog. And I really, really loved Dave's picks right off the bat. But this was just a great panel. And I think we've been to a few of these panels before, and I guess
Hmm.
it's always tough when you have like a crowd full of people that are super passionate about something, and like a panelist or a group of panelists that are trying to engage with them, but also, make something that's fun. And this was just such a cool panel because we kind of got there. Obviously the panelists introduced themselves and then they made a list of their top 10 DS games, and each panelist brought two games. And then it was kind of the idea was you can go up to the mic, you have like 10 seconds to pitch what game you want to add to the list, what game you want to remove from the list, and why. and it's like a 10-second pitch, and people would kind of get up to the mic and they would just talk as fast as they could. It was awesome. And it was super engaging for the crowd. And
Yeah, well, no, just the goal was to really, really come up with the list of the best, the essential, the Nintendo DS games, which is such a monumental task to try and think about. And as you mentioned, the execution, getting the crowd involved, being able to pitch, what they should think should be on the list and then what they think should come off of the list to really, I've never, been in that massive of a successfully collaborative environment before.
yeah, it
And
was really awesome.
yeah,
Actually, there's I guess, a Twitch link to this, and I'm gonna leave that in the description of this episode. So go check out that Twitch stream. 'Cause that Twitch stream was awesome, I'm sure. And you can hear me because I am wooing at like everything. I don't was just so excited to just be in that environment. I was a total woo slut. If you can hear somebody just like screaming and wooing, that is me.
and if you hear someone quietly admiring everyone around them, that was me. Because again, I didn't know a lot of these games, but it's hard not to just have so much fun in that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I just want to actually, before we end, I want to give a huge special shout out to everybody that was at that panel because something that I guess we haven't talked about is this time is I brought my 3DS with me to all 3 days. I really wanted to experience Street Pass. I've never met or matched with somebody on Street Pass. I got my 3DS in 2020, 2021, and I just have never been able to meet anyone and like do the Street Pass thing. So I think in order for you to match with somebody in Street Pass, you have to be within 10 feet of them, or 10 meters, I think. And I've just never, and your Nintendo 3DS has to be in sleep mode, and they have to have their Nintendo DS or 3DS in sleep mode, and that's how you, I guess, connect on Street Pass. And I have never connected with anybody on Street Pass before, so I just want to say thank you to everybody at that panel who brought their 3DS, because that was so special to be able to like actually connect with some people via the 3DS on Street Pass, both at that panel, and I had a few the day before at, I guess, just on the show floor. So to everyone that brought their 3DS, you have a special place in my heart, so thank you for that. That was really special just to get back. And I think at the end of Saturday, I kind of just got back to your apartment. I was like, all right, let's see if we got anyone. And I just had like a bunch, and that
Like
was really,
the whole map of the U.S. I don't
yeah.
remember if they were international
I don't think I got
people.
anyone that's international, but it was really awesome. Actually, I think I got somebody from Canada, but it was really awesome, and it meant a lot to me personally. So I think that that's a beautiful way to end in this episode. It's the people that
Yeah,
you meet.
absolutely.
But yeah, that was awesome. So that was our PAX East 2024. I guess thank you for allowing me to stay. Oh, we have to give a special shout out to the MVP of this trip, Dennis, Andrew's dog. He was just the best boy and so
Yes.
excited to welcome us.
He was very kind to let us abandon him all day for 3 days straight so that we could go and play video games with other adults.
And I guess just a special thank you to you, Andrew, not only for, I guess, coming on this episode, but also for hosting me, both you and Kaylin. It really means a lot. And I had so much fun, I guess, playing board games with you guys at your place after PAX. So that was just special for me because I don't get a ton of time to play board games with people, and that was awesome for me. So thanks for hosting, thanks for coming on, and thanks for playing games with me back at your place.
Well, thank you so much for coming up and for experiencing PAX again for the third year with me, for having so much fun. And yeah, thank you for having me on this podcast. It's really fun way for me to relive, I think, PAX just with you here a month later. And it's gotten me excited for all these games again. And hopefully, if you're listening and you didn't get a chance to make it to PAX, in between all of our incoherent rambling, hopefully you took something away about a game that we thought was fun, and hopefully you did too. So thank you, Blake, for having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess that's PAX. I guess we'll see you in 2025.